This group for what they've been able to accomplish and going undefeated and winning the national championship.
Streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the Tide 100.9 app. Here is your host of Off the Edge, Jacob Harrison.
Your man overthrown. Spit out the ball.
Hello there. Good morning. Welcome in to Off the Edge Tide 100.9. Great day to talk some Alabama football. We'll do it for the next 56 minutes here on your home for Crimson Tide Sports, all available on the Tide 100.9 app. Just search up in the Google Play Store and on the App Store, Tide 100.9. Appreciate it, Michael. Check out Alabama Vintage too, by the way, at Alabama VTG on the Instagram account. It's the best way to keep up with the new items that are in stock. Go ahead and get those in stock for you. Check them out there. AlabamaVTG.com as well. You can connect with the brand ambassadors for 15% off your order at Alabama VTG. Check them out, 2210 University Boulevard under the Crimson Awning, and you can take advantage of some of the great things they've got inside there, whether it's the hat wall, incredible selection of hats ranging from Alabama Crimson Tide's professional hats to of all leagues, and just a lot of great vintage items in there as well. I mean, it's an antique mall for Crimson Tide memorabilia, so the memorabilia lining the walls as well, that's all up for sale as well, so you can find something in there that gives you those fuzzy feelings about the teams that you love the most concerning the Alabama Crimson Tide. Plenty to get into. In about 10 minutes, we'll talk with AJ Spurr, the site editor of Roll Tide Wire, USA Today Sports, covering the Alabama Crimson Tide. We'll get his thoughts on the Florida game and Will Anderson and so many guys that played a role in Alabama being able to stave off the Florida Gators in the swamp, winning 31-29. We'll get his thoughts on that, as well as the Bama Pros, what the outlook is going for the SEC West as we head into a big weekend with Arkansas and Texas A&M set to square off in Jerry World as well. So plenty to get into on that front. Yesterday, we got to talk to Will Anderson, though. And when we got to talk to Will Anderson, he was very, very fired up. And we'll hear from him in just a minute. But as we always do, we'll play the opening comments from Nick Saban. And here's the funny thing. A lot of folks get up in arms after the performance, but I feel like maybe I had a point yesterday, and that's one of the few times where it's not me patting myself on the back. It's a standpoint of we really did play another good football team, and most of the things that didn't go our way went their way because they had the impact on the game, whether it was the Gators fan base, whether it was Dan Mullen's play calling. A lot of that game came down to the fact that Florida was prepared to play in the football game and prepared to win the football game. I don't think Alabama played bad by any stretch of the imagination. So when you're really, going into it, you look at the defense, you're like, 29 points, man. And if they don't flubber up those 2 point after attempts, whether it's 2-point conversion or the extra point that they missed early, you're like, defense, not really. I mean, the safeties didn't play well. I mean, Jordan Battle won Player of the Week, but for his special teams efforts. And yes, no big plays, but still big third downs were converted. And a lot of those had to do with either Jordan Battle or DeMarco Helms. Josh Jobe, if the play came in his direction, didn't play particularly well, but he did hold Jacob Copeland to one catch for 10 yards. So you can look at these sorts of things and be like, oh, I'm not so sold. Offensive line, well, you only get 100 rushing yards. Didn't necessarily dominate on that front, but when you kind of dive in a little bit, you see Emil Ekiyor's doing his job. Every time they run right, they're picking up at least 5 yards. It kind of starts to add up. Chris Owens, is he an excellent right tackle? Probably not. Is he a better center? Absolutely. But when you struggle to snap the ball to your quarterback, regardless of how tall he is, changes have to be made. Darian Dalcourt can play better, but at the same time, Chris Owens isn't, he's not a turnstile out there. Like, he's still doing his job. The one sack he gave up, not his fault. So I think it's understandable why Nick Saban is so even keel this week and not as boisterous as he was after the game with Mercer. Because Matt Hereford retweeted this a day or two ago. Don't lose respect for winning. Nick Saban said on the Nick Saban show a while back, don't lose the respect for winning. We get so caught up in the perfection and we lose sight of the fact that the goal is to win the game. And if the other team makes it difficult to do that, then respect the fact that you won and take what's positive and take what's negative and then move forward. This is a simple sport, right? That's why it's so popular, is because it's easy to understand, but at the same time, like, we make it seem too easy. That we can dissect absolutely everything, even when we have unknown quantities within the realm of what was going on. So Nick Saban can break it down and make it sound even more simple. But if he's not entirely worried, I mean, he did say he was concerned about the fact that the defense gave up what they did in that ball game, but it's circumstantial to the fact that the offense didn't move the ball very well in the second quarter. And that gassed the defense. Well, why don't you use the depth? Well, maybe that depth isn't ready. Or maybe the guys that you do have out there are guys that are just difficult to take off the field. Will Anderson, Fedarian Mathis, Jordan Battle. These guys are difficult to remove from the field. Will Anderson and Henry To'oto. Like, you don't want to make so much out of the depth, more so than just to take advantage of the fact that you have it. So let's hear from Nick Saban. This is what Coach Saban had to say yesterday in his opening comments to get the week started for Southern Miss. Here's Coach Saban.
Well, after looking at the film, we played really, really well for the first 20 minutes, 25 minutes of the game. Had 3 straight scoring drives, got some stops on defense, executed fairly well, and then sort of stalled on offense. 3 series in a row, we went 3 and out. Started making some mistakes on defense. They scored, got back in the game. Momentum of the game changed, and we became, kind of an ordinary team. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this situation, especially playing on the road against a good team. You can't let up in a game. You got to be able to sustain and play Alabama football for 60 minutes in a game. I can't relinquish big leads. So there's a lot of things for our players to learn in terms of what we could do better from an execution standpoint, and how we need to sustain, our intensity for 60 minutes in the game so we can play Alabama football. There's another opportunity and another challenge this week against Southern Miss. These guys have played really well on defense. They're one of the toughest people to run against of anybody in the country. Offensively, I know their first quarterback got hurt, but Keys is a really athletic guy. They do some of the same kind of quarterback runs and things that we saw a week ago. They've got good skill players on offense. These guys play hard. They're well coached. So, this will be a challenging game for us. And, I think that, spirit is a little bit different than attitude. Your spirit kind of tells you what your energy and enthusiasm is, and your energy and enthusiasm is what creates mental energy and intensity. And that's something that we got to work on, and we got to practice it every day. You got to practice it and practice. So you're developing the kind of habits and making the kind of choices that you can sustain and do things the way you need to do it when the game comes. So that's what we're focused on.
So that's Nick Saban, and he's talking about the spirit of the team, right? And Will Anderson was asked about this. And before we get to the spirit of the defense, I asked Will Anderson about what his leadership style was, because he seemed pretty irritated, very very engaged in this press conference to get a message across. When he was asked about Drew Sanders, it turned into, yeah, Drew's been doing good. And I texted him after the game. He's been doing great. But then it kind of devolved into this. In the outside linebacker room, we need to watch more film. We need to do more as a cohesive unit. We need to make football the most important thing. And you could hear a lot of Nick Saban in there, but he's not satisfied with where the defense is playing because, make no mistakes about it, it's the best defense in college football, but it's still giving up more than it wants to. And that's the mark of a great defense. You have a standard and you want to play up to it. That standard is nigh impossible, but you're still playing up to it. And that's what the defense is doing so well, is that they do hold that sense of intensity. But one thing that's been about this team is the inexperience. So where does the leadership come from? And Will Anderson owned up to the fact that he's not the vocal leader that he now feels like he should be. Here's what Will Anderson said, told me yesterday about his leadership in the press conference.
Honestly, for me, being a leader has kind of been not challenging. It hasn't been challenging, but I'm more of I do it through my actions. I'm not really a vocal leader. I just try to do things right, show people how it's done, just come in, keep my head down, work, and just show through example how everything is supposed to be done. But, I think now I have to take that step and be more vocal and, get guys on the same page because I know right from wrong. And it's selfish of me not to tell the other guys what they're doing wrong or, just that part of it. So I just need to be more vocal leader.
Now let's get to the spirit of the defense. If he's got to be more of a vocal leader, then what does he want that to create with his team? Here's what Will Anderson said. He wants the spirit of the defense to be how he envisions his 10 best friends in the world going up against the rest of the SEC.
Definitely need to pick it up, and we both definitely need to get back to the Alabama standard. And the message all year and all offseason was we're going to be a fast, physical football team, and I think that's what we need to get back to. So I think when everybody look at their own individual performances and we come together as a defense and we sit down and we talk, I think that will really help. And we're going to keep getting better each week, and we're going to just keep getting that message out there that we are a fast, physical football team.
And today we'll hear from Slade Bolden and Cameron Latu, and I'm going to be curious to see what their stance is on what the leadership is looking like for the offense. But when you look at what Will Anderson is saying here, it's great. This defense is great, and we have a standard that we're just not living up to just yet. We're right there on the precipice of being the elite enforcers of every ball game that we play in, and sometimes great offensive minds are able to take advantage of every inch on the field, and they're able to get things done because the rules favor them. And you have to understand that as a defensive mind. You're not going to be able to just absolutely shut down the opposition in every facet of the game in total destruction. It's just not the feasible way to approach the game anymore. What you do have to do is manage what is brought against you. And that is something that has to evolve within the defensive scheme and those sorts of things. And I think Nick Saban has picked up on that. I think Pete Golding's done a good job of evolving with that as he's grown as a defensive coordinator too. But with Will Anderson, what you wanted to see is now what's going to unfold, I believe, because I'm not going to question the Terminator. He says he's going to do something. He's going to do it. Transitioning from more of an actions kind of guy, which Saturday was a display of his actions. He left it all on the field. I mean, he had to be practically carried off the field because he was so exhausted from doing so much. And especially in those critical moments, he and Fedarian Mathis getting a huge tackle for loss on Florida's not true final drive, but their final efforts to get into the end zone, which they did. But at the same time, you got to be able to make the plays when you've got to make them. And to see Drew Sanders kind of do that on the 2-point conversion, those sorts of things, it's steps towards that progress. And I think Will Anderson's got a point. He does have to pick up and be a more vocal leader because that seems to be something that's lacking. And hearing Jay Barker and a few of the guys talking yesterday about who were some of the leaders back in the 90s, those were guys that you didn't mess with, but when they stood up and they talked, you respected their time and you listened to what they had to say and you took it to heart. That's something Alabama's going to have to do with Will Anderson because he's the best player on the team, and he's got a real opportunity now to take the bull by the horns and really lead this team to something incredibly great. We'll take a break, come back. We'll talk to AJ Spurr next here on Off the Edge. Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama sports.
This is Robert Langdon. The suspect called him.
I teach symbology. He wants me to locate an ancient portal buried within the Capitol.
From the author of the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons.
It's your dad. The people who took him want me to find a piece of a very old puzzle.
And executive producers Ron Howard and Brian Grazer.
We have to finish this or my dad is dead.
Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol. Streaming now with new episodes every Thursday. Only on Peacock.
Now, in-home or in-office do-it-yourself COVID-19 testing is available to you, and the results are 99% accurate. Save your time and be safe by avoiding the lines and crowds. You can test yourself and your family members at home. Test your employees at work, making sure your workplace is safe. Simply call Citation Bioscience at the number we're about to give you to order your COVID-19 testing kits. When they arrive, follow the simple instructions and send them back to us with our prepaid shipping. Results are ready the next day in 95% of the cases. And remember, they are 99% accurate and reimbursable by your insurance company. Save your time, stay safe, and avoid the crowds. Order your COVID-19 kits now by calling this number now. Pricing starts at $119 and discounts are available for larger orders. Call now. 800-247-8046. 800-247-8046. That's 800-247-8046.
Church's has a deal made for you or all y'all. Choose your favorite tenders of classic style chicken and spicy or original with sides and biscuits for everyone. So swing by for Church's Feed 6 starting at $20 deals. Church's, bringing that down home flavor. Offer valid at participating locations.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Occasionally cloudy this afternoon and tonight. Scattered to numerous showers and thunderstorms are likely. Today's high 83, tonight's low 67. Tomorrow, showers ending early in the day, becoming mostly sunny, windy, and less humid. The high at 75. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 76 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
We aren't going anywhere. Off the Edge is available in the podcast center on Tide100.9.com.
We're back here on Off the Edge. Excuse me, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. We're going to go out. We're going to talk with AJ Spurr, the site editor of Roll Tide Wire, USA Today sports covering the Alabama Crimson Tide at Spurr FM on the Twitter account. AJ, man, it was a hot and humid day in Gainesville, but the Alabama Crimson Tide did escape the jaws of defeat. Of course, the chomp claps were quite loud, though, as was the entire swamp. AJ, how you doing, man?
Well, I just left my cardiologist appointment. I made that one at halftime on Saturday when Bama was down there in the swamp. Damn near gave me a heart attack. No, but doing good. Excited for this upcoming week and the weeks to come when it comes to Crimson Tide football.
No doubt about it. I mean, Southern Miss, you kind of like having the Golden Eagles there in between two big games. Those Ole Miss Rebels, though, there's a lot of Alabama fans that are looking from this game and seeing Matt Corral and what he's done throughout this season and thinking about this defense. But before we do get to the defense, let's talk with some supreme positivity, or at least I hope so. I hope you see he was scared to run into the end zone when he tossed up a perfectly fine pass to Cameron Latu. Right foot goes down, it's a touchdown. Left foot, unfortunately, came down out of bounds. What's kind of been your assessment of Bryce Young through these three games and how he handled the swamp, though? To me, I still see a guy that really has a shot at being one of the best quarterbacks to ever play here.
I completely agree with you, and I think when comparing him to a bunch of other either true freshmen or first-year starters around the college football landscape, he's really holding his own, and I think he currently has that, number one spot embedded into him just because of how well he's played. There are a few questions, accuracy this past week against Florida wasn't entirely there. We all have to remember he's a sophomore. He's a true sophomore. He's not looking for NFL right now. He's looking to perfect his craft at the collegiate level. He still has, at a minimum, one more season after this, potentially two. So he's not in a hurry to impress any NFL scouts right now. If anything, he's looking to impress some NIL sponsors. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. There's plenty of time. We're only 3 weeks in into him being the true Crimson Tide starting quarterback. So there are a few things he may need to work out, but nothing that people need to be worried about, nor should they be looking to Jalen Milroe or Paul Tyson to get some more playing time, because I saw some things about, should they start getting a little bit more looks late in the game just to get them some experience just in case. Brush that to the side. I'm not concerned about that. I don't think anybody really has a reason to be concerned about that. Just some Alabama fan base greed, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I agree. And especially when you consider, to go into the swamp, it being as loud as it was, as hot and humid as it was, which did seem to play a little bit of a factor. Didn't see too much cramping, though, which was a good thing. But overall, to make that your first SEC road start, we give Mac Jones a lot for how he performed in the Iron Bowl in 2019, his first road SEC start. And he played really well, but he also had the 2 interceptions that kind of did the game in, one clearly not being his fault. But, Bryce Young able to avoid those types of mistakes really helped Alabama preserve that lead, especially late when you, in the second quarter, the second half, you're able to possess the ball for as long as they did. And I know it had a little bit to do with the running game, but it also had to do with Bryce Young managing this offense. He did a fine job in that stat. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. And I think, you alluded to this earlier with him not running it into the end zone. Sometimes his decision-making is, that of a veteran multi-year starter in college football. And then there are other times you look at him and you think, well, he's young and he makes some questionable decisions. I think not running it into the end zone was a questionable decision. I am not Bryce Young. I was not on the field. I wasn't even there. Jacob, you can attest to this more so than I can. I thought he should have ran it in much like everyone else does, but he saw Latu open. He gave him a good pass. Latu just put down the wrong foot first, and you move on from it. Alabama still got away with the win. That definitely would have been the dagger to end the game. But overall, if we take questionable decisions versus, right decisions made by Bryce Young, I think they would outweigh the questionable one by a long shot. It's just that everybody's going to remember the questionable ones at the end of the day.
I want to ask you about the running game, AJ. Trey Sanders is my guy, but if Alabama's got to throw the ball, he can't be out there. He's not as good of a pass protector as Brian Robinson nor Jace McClellan. And McClellan gives you a little bit more in the passing game as well. But I'm about ready to go out on a limb, and I'm probably going to do it very, very soon. That Jace McClellan just needs more touches. I love Brian Robinson. I think he plays with a lot of intensity, and he's certainly an incredible leader. But as far as explosiveness, all of that goes into the Chase McClellan category. What's your assessment of the running game, though? Are you a big fan of Jace McClellan, or is there what do you want to see more out of this rushing attack so that it's not hitting just at the 100-yard mark against the Florida defense?
It's really hard to pick any one running back in particular out of this class. Much like yourself, Jacob, I'm a huge Trey Sanders guy. I became a Trey Sanders super fan the day he committed and said he was going to win the Heisman his true freshman year. I was on the Trey Sanders bandwagon from the jump at that point. I also like Brian Robinson. He's been with the team for a long time. He's paid his dues. He's waited his turn, and here he is. He's been given his opportunity to shine in the limelight. The only issue is now you have Jace McClellan, who can seemingly do it all, a Swiss Army knife out of the backfield. Okay. And he's proving, that he can be efficient and effective in that role. And when you're Brian Robinson, who, he can pass block, he's a bowling ball, he can run through the line, break through. You kind of have to weigh who is going to help you more in any given game. In this past game, for me, it was Jace McClellan. I think he was, or should have been really the go-to guy out of the backfield for Alabama. I wouldn't be surprised here if Jace McClellan ended up getting promoted into RB1 sooner rather than later, especially considering the season's gauntlet is getting ready to start after Southern Miss.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks that like to say Alabama doesn't play anybody. It's about to get real. Southern Miss, New Mexico State, forget about them. Okay, those are bye weeks. Don't look ahead, but this SEC schedule, man, is not going to be easy for Alabama. And I agree, man. Good things just tend to happen when Jace McClellan touches the ball. We'll see how how many more opportunities he gets moving forward. Switching to the defense, I thought they played relatively well. Hard to get a lot. I know this from personal experience. It's very hard to play defense when your offense does not move the ball. You get so unbelievably exhausted. And you get all that time on the sideline to look at what the offense is doing. No, you don't get it at all. And that was a big problem we saw in 2018 when the team was scoring too fast. So you kind of see the inverse of it when the offense doesn't move the ball at all. But still, even with a few things being what they were, Will Anderson yesterday talking about how he wants to change his leadership and playing through that injured knee to win co-SEC Defensive Player of the Week without even recording a sack. What did you make of the defense and how they played in the swamp, but most specifically what Will Anderson is bringing to this team, even when his stats don't necessarily show it?
Well, let me go ahead and start with the secondary. I think that this Crimson Tide secondary against Florida did mostly their job. If I want to get into specifics, Josh Jobe continues to be, the member of the secondary that is either hit or miss. With him, he's either on point all the time or he's missing assignments and he's getting into unnecessary penalty trouble, which has seemingly been a problem for a few years now for some reason. Now, moving into the defensive line, Will Anderson, great linebacker, can do it all. I'm amazed that he came back from this injury after being questionable all week. 3.5 tackles for loss, 7 tackles overall on a bad knee. You just got to give him props. However, we look at, DJ Dale, we look at Fedarian Mathis. There are too many big bodies up front for this Alabama defensive line for the run defense to be as poor as it is. It just seems like holes are opening up left and right with this Alabama defensive line. And teams are looking at that right now. If they can't get this corrected now, who knows what's going to happen once Alabama goes in and plays Ole Miss, plays Texas A&M, Arkansas, Auburn. These teams are watching Alabama because much like every other year, Alabama's the one team circled on their schedule. And they are making note of every little thing they do. So I think, it's now or never for this defense to fully correct itself, especially after all the high praise they had heading into this season. It's just, got to make these corrections now rather than later.
No, I certainly agree with that. And especially when you consider the fact that we talk about the depth and especially the depth on the interior defensive line. And we know how good Will Anderson and Henry Toto are. Both those guys should be making more of an effort. And still, you kind of look at that Florida game, a situation where Florida's elite players were not the ones doing all the damage. Emory Jones did do quite a bit in the running game, but it was also not Damian Pierce helping out. It was other guys that were able to take advantage there in the second half, especially. So I agree with you there. A lot of these defensive front guys, very good pass rushers, but you got to be able to stop in the run game too. So we'll see how that maybe improves. But maybe it's from a standpoint of leadership too. Both sides of the ball have been called into question on this a number of times from fans and from analysts. And I kind of just want to get your takes on it. Does Alabama have a leadership problem, especially when Will Anderson says, well, I've got to evaluate the way that I act as a leader. I've got to be more vocal. Is that something that we feel like is just missing on the defensive side of the ball? And who do we look for on the offensive side?
This is one of those things where you look at years past and there was such a clear answer as to who the leader is, even heading into a new season where the previous year's leader may have, gone into the NFL. We look at leaders like Dylan Moses. I mean, even Tua and Mac Jones on the offensive side of the ball in years past, Najee Harris. Defense in this case, heading into the season, either Will Anderson or Henry Toto would have been my guess. Henry, at first against the Miami Hurricanes, he came out strong. Looked to me like he was the quarterback of the defense. Since then, it's kind of, tailed off a little bit. Will Anderson, obviously a dominant force, but is he leading the defense overall? Is he the go-to guy for defense, not just linebackers and D-line, but the secondary as well? Can they rally around him? And let me tell you, his answers in press conferences this week, especially talked about needing to watch more film and be a little bit more vigilant against their upcoming opponent, to me, that shows he's willing to step up and assume the role of the defensive leader, being the quarterback of the defense, if you will. Now, if we want to look over at the offense, a lot of question marks. Obviously, you'd hope Bryce Young, the starting quarterback for the offense, would be the main leader or the go-to guy for a lot of these players. But with him being so young and so inexperienced and still having a lot of things to learn, you have to wonder if the rest of the offense turns to him and says, he's clearly our leader, but can I go to him with questions? Can I go to him when I'm in need of guidance? Because he himself needs guidance in certain things. And that's not a knock on Bryce Young or anyone else on the offense, but that's just pure fact. How can you turn to someone if they themselves need help and guidance? So, I'll pose that question to you as well, Jacob. Who do you think is the go-to guy on the offense? Because I don't know. I want it to be Bryce Young, but I can't go ahead and rubber stamp that.
See, and that's where you look at how well-spoken John Mechie and Bryce Young both are. When they're in the media, like they can give you so much, but they're both soft-spoken guys. Are they the kind of guys that can rear up and lead by more than just example and be vocal kind of guys? Evan Neal is a soft-spoken kind of guy too. A friendly giant kind of guy. So who's going to get in your face? Chris Owens, very similar to Evan Neal in that fact. Emil Ekiyor, who's the guy that's, going to rah-rah a little bit and get in your face? I think Brian Robinson does that. But it's also, we've seen that with the running backs and not necessarily everywhere else. So I don't know. I hope that somebody can realize that there may be a void there and step up into that spot. Let's look at the Gators. What do you think? They just played up to Alabama, or are they going to mellow out? Do you think we'll see them again? What's your impressions of Florida after the way they performed in the Swamp?
Just real quick, I don't think we're going to see them again. I think Georgia takes the East easily. And it's weird to say that Florida, played up to Alabama, because everybody Alabama plays, the opponent is playing up to the Crimson Tide. I mean, when you're the gold standard in college football, you come to expect that from your opponent. As to what happened with Florida, I think Will Anderson said it best when he went ahead and said we weren't, as prepared as we would have liked to be. We weren't watching the film as closely as they should have, and hopefully they correct that for future opponents. Jacob, because I'm very scared about what's to come with this schedule. Now, Emory Jones was the quarterback. Richardson did not get out at all, which means to me, Alabama should have been even more prepared for what was going to happen in the game. I don't know. There were too many holes. There were too many question marks, and it just seemed like very, very sloppy football. And you have to wonder if they weren't prepared for this game against what was then number 11 Florida, what's to come when they play an Ole Miss team that's certainly going to rise up the rankings and are currently number 13, or an A&M team that will likely be top 10 or at least top 15 by the time the two teams play. There's a lot of questions that need answers to, and this Florida game did nothing for me except bring forward more questions.
Talking with AJ Spurr, site editor of Roll Tide Wire, at Spurr FM on the Twitter account as well. AJ had tweeted out that Alabama's vulnerable. And I mean that as more of a wake-up call to that this is a much more balanced scene at the top of college football. And that just means good football. And that's a positive for me. I'm a football fan first. I live for the anxiety as well. But at the same time, never really thought Alabama would lose to Florida at any point in the game. Maybe got a little bit more, okay, got to sit up straight, kind of thing. Put the article on hold, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, like what's your impression with the way that the top of the college football world kind of sits? It's not what we expected. Clemson's not very good offensively. Ohio State's still struggling. Oklahoma's been up and down, and we've got Iowa and Oregon sitting in the top 5. So it's something new, and it might give us a little bit more to anticipate when we get to the college football playoff discussion later in the year. But how do you think Alabama kind of fits into this new kind of space in the top of the college football world where it's a little bit more level?
It's odd. It seems like the rankings this year have been all over the place in comparison to years past, except there's one constant. And that one constant is the number one spot, belonging to Nick Saban in Alabama. So that's one thing we all need to take into account. However, Jacob, I'm the site editor for Roll Tide Wire, which is the USA Today site for Alabama. However, there are a whole host of college wire sites for USA Today. And every so often I'll go on each of the different team sites and I'll just see what they're talking about, because every so often they'll talk about Alabama. And recently, after this Florida game, it seemed like almost every single one of them mentioned in their headline, Alabama looked beatable. And I'll have to agree with them. I think your tweet saying they're vulnerable, these headlines saying they're beatable, Alabama may be Goliath to a lot of these teams, but they're not invincible. They're this big, scary team that has holes as of right now. Maybe they'll be corrected soon in this season. However, this is still a team. This is still a football team. Nick Saban is a human. He is a coach. And if there's going to be a year where Alabama's schedule comes back to bite them, I mean, Arkansas is ranked this year, Jacob. Come on. If there's going to be a year where Alabama, gets truly tested as this unbeatable force, 2021 is that year. No one really thought that heading into it. But now that we're a quarter of the way through the regular season, I think it's almost foolish to say that this Alabama team's fully invincible and can't be beaten.
I think that gives us a lot to enjoy. And for my money, I'm curious what you think about it. To me, it's more impressive to run the gauntlet at that point. If you're vulnerable and you're not absolutely invincible, and you're still able to go out there and win a championship, to me, that's more impressive. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the 2020 season and what that team did, utterly dominating nearly everybody and being what Nick Saban called the ultimate team. But if you're a little bit vulnerable and you're still able to get the job done and the playing field is a little bit more even, that just means good football. And that means a good story in itself too.
Exactly. I think the story part of it is, more notable. If this Crimson Tide team is faced with resiliency this season and they actually have to overcome something, then I think that a championship won in 2021 would be more impressive in the eyes of the rest of college football than ones in years past where it's almost been a given. Well, yeah, there goes Alabama winning another championship. This would be in the eyes of the rest of college football a quote unquote earned ring, an earned SEC title in a year where the SEC seems to have every other team ranked, So, I agree with you 100% on that.
I love it. You brought up Arkansas being ranked. They're 14. Texas A&M is 7. They're really given the benefit of the doubt there after losing their quarterback and handling New Mexico. But this is a big game now in Jerry World. After Arkansas handled their old Texas rival, now they're going to deal with their new one, relatively new one. I mean, rekindled, I guess, would probably be the word. How do you see that one shaking out? This is kind of a measure of your gumption. Do you believe in the Pigs?
Do I believe in the Pigs? Yes. However, do I believe in the Pigs' ability to take down Texas A&M despite them not having a quarterback? I don't. I think the Aggies walk away from this one victorious, which pains me to say because I would love to see a team like Arkansas go from, near irrelevancy in the SEC all the way up to, a legitimate contender in the SEC West. However, A&M losing their quarterback, that's obviously a really big hit, but there are so many other facets of this team that just breeds success. I think their quarterback, obviously a big hit, but, that's one piece of a puzzle that I think you can still make out without that one piece.
Sticking in the West, what do you think of Ole Miss, the job that Lane Kiffin and Matt Corral are doing over there? It's rather impressive. We're not looking ahead, but that is the next big game here in the SEC. It'll be the 2:30 kickoff game for CBS. What do you make of the Rebels and the way they've performed?
I love it. I absolutely love it. In 2019, I was at SEC Media Days over in Hoover, and Matt Corral, as a freshman, wasn't even the starter. I don't even know where he was on the depth chart. He was probably number 3 on the depth chart. John Reese Plumlee was still, considered the go-to guy for Ole Miss. And I think, Matt Luke was still there. So it was just Corral and Luke sitting up there, and no one was really interested in seeing what they had to say, because here's a backup quarterback and a coach that's probably not going to be there for too much longer. And there was something about Corral that stood out to me. I don't know if it was his confidence or the fact that, here's a kid who isn't even close to sniffing the starting position right now, but is talking as if he's going out there and is the starting quarterback. And then when Lane Kiffin got brought into Ole Miss, I called it. I said, this duo is going to be an issue for the SEC and college football in general. I was laughed at, Jacob. I was laughed at. I was. But here we are 2 years later. And, Alabama fans got this Ole Miss game circled on their schedule. So, should the team look forward to this game? No. Go ahead and worry about mini Frank Jr. and the Golden Eagles of Southern Miss for now. But Alabama fans, go ahead and look up what this Rebels team has to offer. Look up Matt Corral. Go ahead and see what their defense has to offer, because their defensive line is dangerous. And if Bryce Young gets pressured, and we want to ask about his decision-making, there's a true test right there. So go ahead and get educated on these Rebels, because 2 weeks from, well, I guess a week from this Saturday now, we'll get to witness some great football.
No doubt about it. Talking with AJ Spurr, site editor of Roll Tide Wire of USA Today, covering the Alabama Crimson Tide. Check him out on Twitter at Spurr FM. Let's go ahead and dive into some of these Bama pros. Your quarterback there, Tua Tagovailoa, I love him, but this is one where I hate to do it. I do, but I hate to have to question his toughness. Because when I heard it was a rib injury and that he had to be carted off, my mind instantly went to Justin Fields throwing 6 touchdowns in the college football playoff after a linebacker put his helmet directly through Fields' ribs. I'm not discrediting the fact that this was a hard hit, but we have seen the injury thing with Tua, and this is one that's sending me on the other side of the aisle a little bit. Am I wrong? Should Tua be a little bit more tough with this injury that he's facing, the bruised ribs?
This is one of those things where you ask yourself, if I was in his shoes, how would I feel?
Right.
And, Justin Fields and Tua both had similar rib injuries here. But there's so many factors we're not sure about. Obviously, Fields got the helmet to the ribs. Tua, was driven down into the ground with his ribs, hitting the ground, and that's what caused the injury there. Is his resiliency being brought into question? Yes. I think that was something that was being considered when he was still a prospect heading into the NFL draft. I think it's worth noting that a lot of his injuries have not been reoccurring.
Right.
He's just injured various things, which isn't better, but it's, important to note he hasn't been re-injuring his hip or his ankle or his knee. I think this also speaks volumes to the fact that a lot of what people have been pointing out wrong with Tua's game may not be completely attributed to Tua's skill set. That offensive line, Jacob, in 2 possessions, he was injured in the second possession of the game for the Miami Dolphins.
Yep. He
was sacked 3 times. And then Jacoby Brissett went in there, and people were worried about his safety. So, I think that there's a lot of issues that need to be dealt with when it comes to the Miami Dolphins, especially this offensive line. But until you get that fixed, is it even worth putting Tua out there? Because you have to ask yourself, if you're going to put him in a position to just continuously get hurt, what's the point?
I agree with that. I mean, you got to build an offensive line. You can't just throw Jesse Davis out there and be like, hey, he's a veteran in the league. Yeah, well, he can't block. And that's the blind side. That's why Tua got hurt. I mean, I agree. The injuries that he's always sustained have always been 300-pound guys landing on him awkwardly, not in a way that is normal for the NFL. And so I do agree to a point. I gotta wonder, man, if it comes down to his pain tolerance, you're gonna get sacked if you play on Sunday. You're gonna you play for the Dolphins. Just curious about the toughness. But on a more positive note, if you were an Alabama fan and you're a big fan of running the football, last Sunday was it for you, man. Najee Harris, Damian Harris, Derrick Henry, all three of those guys had monstrous games. Najee Harris, Damian Harris, both nominated for the Angry Runs. We'll play that in a little bit as well. But I mean, with the way these three guys played, though, there's plenty to enjoy from these Bama pros, but especially these three guys.
100%. Let's go ahead and start off with Najee Harris. I know you said you're going to play it here in a minute. He threw a grown man with one arm. that was terrifying.
He threw one of the hardest hitting safeties in the NFL with one arm.
So that was amazing. Then you move over to Damian Harris. Okay. Forget about Najee's stiff arm. He was pinballing around defenders, broke through, then carried the entire New York Jets defense into the end zone with him. So that, the sheer strength that Damian Harris showed right there was impressive. And then, of course, we move over to King Henry, who, did it all, much like he usually does on Sundays. Hitting people, stiff-arming people, high-stepping, speeding past defenders. What was it, 60 yards?
I believe so, yeah.
Gosh, come on. Come on. That's not fair.
Hall of Fame paces that he's on, and we'll talk about Derrick Henry too in the final segment. AJ, really appreciate it, man. Encourage everybody to go check out your work at Roll Tide Wire, the USA Today affiliate of the Alabama Crimson Tide, at Spur FM on the Twitter account as well. AJ, man, take it easy, enjoy the weekend, and I would say Roll Tide, but Alabama and Southern Miss, this one's a foregone conclusion.
Yes, sir. We'll go ahead and look forward to the Rebs. You have a good one. I appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely. AJ Spurr, Roll Tide Wire. We'll catch back up with him next Tuesday. We'll come back and give out our Bama Pro of the Week award. I bet you got a thought as to who that is. It'll be a real big surprise, and we'll talk about the Angry Runs as well. Copyright Good Morning Football with Kyle Brandt. That and more. Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama sports.
Want to learn a new language so it will actually stick? Try Babbel. Practice real-life conversations in the Babbel app.
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas?
Get personalized help in Babbel's live online classes.
Classes are limited to 6 people, so everyone can get the help they need.
Review words and phrases with fun games, or dive into the culture with short videos. Whatever your learning style, Babbel gives you the tools you need. Babbel. More ways to learn. Start learning a new language today at Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
Hey, welcome to Everything Outdoors. Can I help you find anything?
Hey, yeah. Can you point us to the camping gear?
Sure, aisle 2.
Snowboarding? Just bought a new Nissan Pathfinder. It's got intelligent 4x4, and we want to hit the backcountry.
Aisle 18.
And the boats?
Are you sure you can do all this?
Up to 6,000 pounds towing, we're good to go. Oh, where's the scuba gear?
Return to rugged in the all-new 2022 Nissan Pathfinder. Available intelligent 4x4 cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions. Always monitor traffic and weather conditions. Towing capability varies by configuration. See Nissan Owner's Manual for proper use.
It's so sticky.
At Hannah's Organic Honey, business may be sweet, but they need an e-commerce queen bee to lead the hive.
Okay, these jars are going to Jakarta. Oh, wait a minute. Does that say Jackson?
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Schedule virtual interviews and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Where will you be on game day? Be a part of the action with a premium reserve tailgate from Game Day Done Right. Get your group together, pick your game and tailgate package, add on catering, beverages, and other tailgating amenities, and let Game Day Done Right take it from there. Enjoy all of the fun game day with zero stress. Visit GameDayDoneRight.com to reserve your tailgate today. For your next tailgate, just add people. Game Day Done Right is the exclusive provider of reserve tailgating services for the University of Alabama and offers packages for all group sizes for a single game or the entire entire season.
O'Reilly. When you need auto parts, O'ReillyAuto.com is just a few clicks away. We offer convenient options for you to get your parts quickly. Order online and pick up for free at your local O'Reilly Auto Parts store. We'll even bring it out curbside. Or you can have your parts delivered right to your door with free shipping on most orders over $35. Visit O'ReillyAuto.com.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
This is Renee.
Happy to be here.
She's not some influencer. She's more of a groundbreaker, turning her 4-acre lot into a little slice of heaven behind the wheel of a John Deere 1 Series tractor. Renee runs with us because the most important job is the next one.
That's all I got.
Nothing runs like a Deere. Get a 1 Series tractor for just $99 per month at your John Deere dealer today. For additional cost information, please call toll-free 855-633-2315.
So sticky.
At Hannah's Organic Honey, business may be sweet, but they need an e-commerce queen bee to lead the hive.
Okay, these jars are going to Jakarta. Oh, wait a minute. Does that say Jackson?
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Schedule virtual interviews and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Occasionally cloudy this afternoon and tonight. Scattered to numerous showers and thunderstorms are likely. Today's high 83, tonight's low 67. Tomorrow's showers ending early in the day, becoming mostly sunny, windy, and less humid. The high at 75. I'm James Spann on the ADC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 76 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Follow Off the Edge on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for live streams and instant analysis. Off the Edge with Jacob Harrison continues.
Damian, let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Damian, you maniac. Damian and Lucifer and Beelzebub and the pits of darkness for 6, 6, 6. Najee in the flat and oh my gosh. He said, you can. This is what we call in angry runs, putting a guy in the stirrups. Jonathan Abram looks like he is in the maternity ward right here, giving birth to an angry run. The scepter goes to the Steel City, Najee Harris. Boom! See you next week. Let's go.
There you go. Stiff arm from hell. Najee Harris gets the scepter. Angry runs. Good morning football. Man, I loved it. Najee got so involved in the game. Did a lot. Scored his first touchdown. Happy for him. My Steelers unfortunately got their heads kicked in by the Las Vegas Raiders. The Bama Pro of the Week, though, does indeed go to Derrick Henry. Over 180 yards rushing, 50 in the air as well. The 3 touchdowns helped bring his team back and get a victory over the Seahawks. Man, listen, put this in some perspective for you. Derrick Henry had 182 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. His third game with at least those stats, 180 yards, 3 scores. He joins Jim Brown, LaDainian Tomlinson, and Adrian Peterson as the 4th player since 1950 to do that 3+ times. Every statistical track you've got for Derrick Henry is Hall of Fame level. He's well on his way. We'll close it down with that. Be on the lookout, Tide109.com. I'll have something written up for you for the Bama Pro of the Week, as well as for the angry runs from both Najee and Damian Harris. And we'll have a lot of fun there. Check us out there. Go check out Alabama Vintage at Alabama VTG on the Instagram account. The Jay Barker Show is coming up next. Ryan Fowler will take you from 2 to 6, as well as Alabama Tradition tonight, following an hour after that. We appreciate your time. Take it easy and roll Tide.